Hey folks. Alright, so in this video I want to talk to you about prepping for an economic crisis. And I've gone over it before how we are already in a recession. We've already met the typically accepted definition of a recession. For the past several decades, a recession has been defined as two consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. We've already hit that, and we're looking at the third quarter being the same. Meanwhile, for 3 months in a row, inflation has been over 8%, 8.4, 8.3, and now 8.2, with no signs of coming down anytime soon. And anybody that's listened to my channel for a while has heard me say before that I don't believe inflation is something that's going to go away anytime soon. I believe we're going to have high inflation for a long time to come, possibly even the next few years. And it's my belief that not only will it stay high, but it will actually get worse. Between all of the government spending, all the printing of money that's been going on the past several years, and it's not just the 2 years under Biden, where the printing press has just been going 90 to nothing. This was happening under Trump. This was happening under other presidents too, but each term, each administration, and each year, the spending by our government just continually gets worse. No individual would be able to continue to spend at the rate that this government does. And the only reason our government gets away with it is because of the Federal Reserve, because they own the printing press. They can print as much money as they want to. So it's my belief that we're already in a recession, and I believe it's a deep recession at that. It's my belief that we are facing the possibility of a Great Depression 2.0. I've mentioned that before. For regardless of whether you believe that's the case or not, we're looking at signs indicating an economic crisis coming our way. Whether you believe it's a really deep recession, whether you believe it's another Great Depression, we're going to have another economic crisis. Possibly as bad as 2007, 2008, 2009, but more than likely it's going to be far, far worse. I want to go over a couple of articles I found here. There's 3 of them in this, actually 4 of them in this list, and there's a broad spectrum of websites. A couple of them are kind of not necessarily mainstream, but I don't rely solely on mainstream media. I've said that before, because mainstream media is, in my opinion, nothing more than a propaganda machine for the Biden administration. Because everything they do, everything they say, all the news that they spread is spun in a way that it benefits Biden, and it attacks anything that, or anyone, I should say, that doesn't agree with what this administration's doing. There's an extreme bias going on in mainstream media. So while I do look at articles from those mainstream sources, I also look at articles from other places, taking into consideration that they're not they may not be verifiable or 100% accurate, but then again, neither is mainstream media. Mainstream media is not accurate at all. So you have to look at all of the different news sources. Anybody in intelligence and intelligence gathering, intelligence analysis, they'll tell you that you can't just look at one source for your news. You have to look at a broad spectrum of sources, and then you have to glean what you can from all of these sources, try to filter out the truth from all of these. Because all of these news sources, no matter what side they're on, there's going to be some that are biased towards the right, some that are biased towards the left, and some that just make stuff up just to get clicks. So you really have to look at all of these, dig through them, and find the little grains of truth, or the little clues, the little nuggets of information in all of them, to find out what's truly going on. So it's not that I'm following any one news source. I'm not following strictly Fox News. I'm certainly not following just CNN or what have you. I try to look at all of it so that I get a good, complete picture of what's going on as best I can. All right, so that being said, the 4 articles I've gotten here, I'm going to start with one. The first one is definitely a left-leaning website, media site. It's Axios. But they have their article. There's something in this that I wanted to read to you. Why it matters. The new economic reality means layoffs, hiring freezes, and other cost-cutting measures. New data from the Challenger, Gray, and Christmas report finds that news media layoffs are beginning to tick up again after a relatively stable summer. So far, nearly 3,000 media jobs have been cut this year, with more than one-third, 1,100, coming from the news media industry. BDG, Recount, Gannett, Recurrent, CNN, Netflix, Acast, Future, Warner Brothers, Discovery, G4, and more have all announced layoffs in the past 2 months. Alright, this is another website that I don't go to often. I have seen a couple of things on it. A lot of people probably haven't heard of it. It's WRAL TechWire. Research Triangle Park. Layoffs continue to be announced, impacting sectors from real estate, logistics, food delivery, technology, and retail, and workers are concerned layoffs could be coming for them too. Microsoft, for example, last week confirmed that the company planned to make cuts, with the possibility that about 1,000 workers would be impacted. And other technology companies have been restructuring, including Google. Intel is expected to lay off as many as 20,000 workers, even though the company has announced major expansion plans in recent months, Bloomberg reported. The numbers are growing. Outside the Triangle and North Carolina area, the number of job cuts that are occurring is growing, as this most recent edition of the WRAL TechWire Layoff Watch documents. For instance, Layoffs.fyi reports that 703 startups have cut at least 92,558 jobs since January 1st, 2022. Layoffs are occurring in the tech sector and in the real estate industry, two of the sectors most impacted by the Federal Reserve's decision to increase interest rates, with another interest rate hike between 50 and 75 basis points expected in November. And further tech sector layoffs rose more than 44,000, according to TechCrunch. All right, that goes back to my last video where I was talking about, or one of my previous videos, where I was talking about the Fed can't stop inflation, but it will cause layoffs. The Fed's goal, their whole plan to stop inflation, is to put so much pressure on the economy that employment rises, from they were reporting employment being at 3.5. They were expecting it to go as high as 4.4% by next year. They want unemployment to go up. They want wages to go down, and they want spending to slow. So they're doing everything they can, which is primarily just putting as much pressure on the economy as possible. The more expensive money is to borrow, whether it's an individual or a company or whatever, the less business is going to be done, and the slower the economy will move. That's their goal. That's the whole plan that they have for stopping inflation. The government is not looking at cutting spending, cutting all this ridiculous, absurd spending. Anybody with any common sense, the first thing they would look at is, okay, first you need to cut any unnecessary spending. Then you need to look at making as much money, extra money as you possibly can. The government isn't doing that. They're continuing all this radical, aggressive spending and printing of money while at the same time trying to choke down inflation. That's not going to work. Moving on, Forbes. This article is from Forbes. Manufacturing giant Philips announced plans this week to lay off roughly 4,000 employees amid prolonged operational and supply challenges, COVID-19 related uncertainty, and worsening macroeconomic environment. Here are the latest major job cuts this year as employers fear rising inflation could slide the economy into a recession. Okay, I'm not going to read it down through all that. The link is going to be down below in the description if you want to read all that. It's a long list. They basically go through all the different little companies, and some of them they've laid off a few dozen. Some have laid off a couple hundred. Some have laid off 1,000. You have to go through the list. It's a long list. The next article, Dark Daily, is probably one a lot of people probably haven't heard of. Amid cost pressures, healthcare providers also plan to cut staff though some jobs are plentiful. Adequate staffing at medical laboratories continues to be a challenge. Thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic and subsequent Great Resignation, masses of people have left the workforce, and companies large and small in all industries are struggling to retain employees. Now, I'm going to stop right there for just a second. I can vouch for that myself because at my current job, we have lost a lot of employees. We're bringing in temps to work. The temps will stay one day and then they'll quit. They won't come back. Nobody wants to work for what's being paid. So there's opportunities out there for people to work, but a lot of people just don't want to work. All right, so moving on. Clinical laboratories have been particularly hard hit with no relief in sight. Now come the results of the Prince Waterhouse Coopers survey, which shows 50% of U.S. companies in various industries, including major healthcare providers, plan to lay off employees, and 83% of organizations intend to move forward with a streamlined workforce, according to the latest PwC report. All right, so those are the 4 articles. There's a lot more articles out there. I mean, if you start looking for this stuff, it's everywhere. There's articles everywhere. Companies all over the place, all over the country, are looking at either cutting jobs or restructuring and not hiring anymore. Employment is going to go up. People are going to get laid off. People are going to have more trouble finding jobs. But on the flip side of that, I don't believe inflation is going to come down. So in that regard, the cost of everything is going to continue to be high, if not go higher. So what you need to be doing, what all of us need to be doing, and what I'm doing myself as best I can, we need to be preparing for a major economic crisis. Whether it's a full-out collapse, I don't know. Whether it's just a severe, deeper recession, or whether we're going to go through a Great Depression 2.0, or maybe it's just something like another run of the 2008 economic crisis. Nobody can really say, but all the signs are there that there's something really bad coming for the economy. And a lot of, just about every economic expert, investors, analysts, what have you, nearly all of them are predicting recessions, depressions, and crashes in the stock market. Now, they're not always right. These experts are not always right. No, they're not. However, when you start seeing every analyst, every expert talking about get out of the market or take extremely defensive positions in the market, when they start talking about how the stock market's going to be going down 20 to 30%, and then you start seeing the same things on mainstream news or news sources, you have to start looking at this like, okay, this might not happen, but if everybody's talking about it, there must be a good reason. There must be a very good possibility of this happening. So all of us need to be bracing and prepping for an economic crisis. Whether it's a crisis, collapse, depression, whatever, prepare for some hard times economically. Things are already hard enough. I know that sounds absurd to say that. It sounds really absurd to say prepare for hard times economically, because we're already going through hard times. We're already seeing massive inflation. We're already seeing people barely able to buy food. But trust me, folks, it's going to get worse. The worst is yet to come. So, what can we do about it? Well, there's a few things that can be done. Aside from the typical storing food, medical supplies, you've got to store food and water so you can feed yourself. Because if for some reason you lose a job and you're not able to find another one, if the government goes through an economic crisis and they're not able to issue food stamps to everybody, you've got to be able to feed yourself and your family. So food and water are the primary places you need to start preparing. If you haven't already, you've gotten a really late start. But even if you're this late starting, late is better than never. Every little bit will help. The next thing you need to do, cut any unnecessary expenses. If you've got subscriptions to streaming services that you don't watch that often, cancel them. Cancel those subscriptions. If you're one of these people that buy subscription boxes, cancel it. Unless you're doing one that's absolutely critical to your lifestyle, I would cancel it, because with a lot of those subscription services, you can find everything you want in those boxes for comparable prices elsewhere, and a lot of those boxes send you stuff that you don't want. So, in my opinion, those boxes, while fun, they can be fun and they can be entertaining to get. It's not an efficient way of spending your money, or using your money. But cut expenses any way possible. If you go by Starbucks every day, stop. Start making coffee at home, or at least cut it down to once or twice a week. You need to start trying to save up an emergency fund if you don't already have one. Now that's extremely difficult to do these days, but if there's any way possible, start putting back at least a little bit of cash every week, if you can afford to, for an emergency fund. The typical recommended emergency fund is anywhere from 3 to 6 months worth of expense. So if you can, that's a lot of money for a lot of people, and a lot of people don't have it. But if you can do it, do it. If you can only put a few dollars back, that's one thing about our grandparents and our great grandparents during the Depression. They really learned how to save and stretch their money. We need to take a lesson from them in that regard. So, save money if you can. The next I would recommend, and I've been talking about doing a video on this for a little while, but I'm just going to go ahead and include it here. You need to have multiple streams of income. In this day and age, with the economy the way it's going, the world the way it's going, you cannot rely on a single income to sustain you. Because if you lose that one income, you've lost everything. If you've got multiple streams of income, at least you've got something to fall back on. Now, those alternative streams of income might not be enough to equal what your normal job is. But trust me, if you go out on unemployment from being fired or laid off, or if you're having to cash in your 401k and live off of that, extra streams of income aside from your main job will help you get through. They will really help stretch that money. I have some myself. The stock market's not the best place to be right now because it's very, very risky unless you have some defensive plays, and even then it's still a risk. If you're willing to do that, I would stick with commodities, things like that, things that I know people will have to buy. And I would stick with stocks that pay dividends, that have a proven history of dividends, so that they can pay you while you own them. I have a few. I don't have a lot. I have a few stocks, aside from my 401k at my job. 401ks, in my opinion, suck because you have almost no say over how they're invested, and the funds that are invested in are usually some of the worst out there. But I do have a few stocks outside of that. Again, not a lot because I don't want to take a big risk, but I do want a little bit of income coming in that way. I've got my knife. I've mentioned my knives before. I make knives. I sell them. It's not consistent. It's not steady income. But when I sell a knife, that's extra money in my pocket. And more than once, I have sold a knife and used that money to buy food, buy gas, or pay a bill. So I've got that, and I've got a couple of other things that I'm working on as well. So if you don't have at least one or two streams of income coming in from other sources aside from your primary job, you're missing a great opportunity to prep. You're missing all that extra income in the ways that it could be used. It's really essential that you build multiple income streams now. So if you can, do that as well. And there's ways of doing that. You can either get a second job, a part-time job. There's ways of making money online. You just have to look into it, find what fits for you. Sell things on eBay if you can still make money that way. The last time I tried to sell things on eBay, the fees and shipping and everything ate up any profit I would have had. So I don't really sell on eBay anymore myself, but for some people it might work. Any spare cash you have that's not in the that's not being invested in food or going towards bills, I would strongly suggest you apply any extra cash you have either into savings, into precious metal like silver, And the reason I say silver is because it's more affordable for people. And I know there's a large segment of the prepper community that hates precious metals. Because everybody says you can't eat metal, you can't eat silver. Well, no, you can't, but you can't eat a bullet either. But people stock those. You can't eat knives, but people stock those. You can't eat blankets, but people stock those. You know, this idea that you're not going to store it up because you can't eat it is about one of the dumbest arguments I've ever heard in my life. Silver has its place. It's not ideal, it's not perfect, it doesn't fit every situation, but it does have its place as a store of wealth, to preserve your wealth during a economic crisis, as a means of exchange, a way to barter, if you will. So if you're into that, some preppers are, some aren't. Put back a little bit of silver. Don't put all your money into one basket. The idea is, like a lot of investment advisors will tell you, you want to be diversified. So you don't want just a 401k for your retirement. You want 401k. You want a stock portfolio. You want to put money in savings. You want to do a whole bunch of different stuff, so that if one of them, something bad happens to one of them, you still got the others going on. It's the same way with your money. You don't want all your money in the stock market. You don't want it all in a 401k. You don't want it all in silver and gold. You don't want it all in food. I mean, food would be if you're going to invest it all in one thing, food would probably be the best way to go. But you don't even want to do that, because there's other things you need to stock up on. You need to prep medical supplies, for example, because with inflation going up, medical expenses are going to get more and more difficult to afford. It's going to get more costly. And we already know medical expenses are extremely high. Medical care is expensive here in the United States right now. So you want to buy some medical supplies. Learn how to use them. Don't just buy a whole bunch of stuff. Don't buy tourniquets and suture kits and stuff like that, like a lot of preppers do, and throw them in a bin and don't know how to use them. Know exactly when to use them, the best way to use them, and more importantly, when not to use them. When not to use certain things like tourniquets and sutures and what have you is more important than knowing when to use them. Trust me, there's a lot of idiots out there that would use those at the worst possible time and cause even more damage. So do your normal preps: food, water, medical supplies, things like that. Stock up on a little bit of silver if you can, and if you want to, if you're into that kind of thing. It can be a way to preserve your wealth when the value of the dollar is going down. Invest in skills. Build a barter network of people that you know that you can trade with. Build multiple income streams. Reduce debt. Pay off as much debt as you possibly can. Avoid taking on more debt. That's the best I can tell you. I mean, nobody can tell you exactly what to do for you without knowing your specific situation. Everybody's situation is different. What everybody has to do is going to be different. What I do for me might not be right for you, and vice versa. What you do might not be right for me. We have to do what's best for our particular situation. So those are just some tips. I would strongly recommend you prep for an economic crisis, because we are facing one. We're in the middle of it right now, if you ask me. And it's my belief it's going to get worse. The whole point, though, and there's going to be a lot of people that say, well, you're fear-mongering, stop it. The whole thing is, though, we prep for eventualities like this. We prep for loss of job, damage to our home, well, disasters. We prep for things like that. An economic crisis is another thing to prep for, and you have to prep for it accordingly. Now, you've got the basics, again, food, water, medical supplies, self-defense items, whatever, what have you. Those same items will apply to all disasters. Some might be more useful in certain disasters than others, but they all have their place. But just like guns and ammo and food and medical supplies are ideal for a civil war or an economic collapse or a social societal collapse, silver and other investments and using your money to buy tangible assets can be a way of preserving your wealth during an economic crisis. You don't want to hold on to money that's losing its value. You want to invest it or put it into something that will maintain its value. That's the whole point of that. So that when society rebuilds, or when the crisis does end, and it eventually will, don't fall for this, we're all going to the Stone Age and we're never coming back. Technology is like a genie in a bottle. Once you let it out, you can't put it back in. The technology is out there. It might take years and years and years to redevelop, but it's out there. So if there's a full-on end of the world as we know it collapse, eventually society will rebuild. Whether it'll be in our lifetime, I don't know, but that would happen. So don't fall for this end of the world situation where we're all going back to the Stone Age and we'll never have machines or technology or cars or anything like that anymore. People know how to do things like that. People are very inventive. So we'll always come back from things like that. The only question is, how long does it take? And in what form does it come back? But the idea for all of this is to prep in ways that benefit us, not only to help us survive whatever crisis we're going through, but help us thrive enough so that when we come out the other side and things start rebuilding, we're better off than most other people. We're not starting from ground up. We're not starting from scratch. Anyway, that's all I've got. I appreciate you guys watching. Like, share, subscribe. If you haven't, I hope you found this useful or informative, or at the very least, maybe entertaining. Who knows? Maybe you're one of those you like to watch this because you find it entertaining. I don't know. But that's all I've got. Keep prepping. Take care. And until next time, folks, I'll catch you later.